Alright, 11.2 talks about the vertex form. Now the vertex form is this very specific way of writing the quadratic function. It's written in this form: some number a times x minus h squared plus k. Now hk is the vertex. Alright? So if you know your vertex and you know what a is, you can just write all this out and you already found your vertex form. Now if you don't know your vertex, you can just figure out the vertex using the technique we just discussed in the previous section. And once you know that, I think most of the questions they ask you is a is either 1 or negative 1. And if a is positive 1, that means it points upward. If a is negative 1, it points downward, and that's all you have to worry about for the a. A is your first term, the term that makes up your x squared term. So these are the actual questions on the homework assignment. So the first question, it says sketch a graph of the equation x squared minus 4. All right. So if you hit y equals and you type in x squared minus 4, okay. Okay. Let me use a different calculator. That screen's a little bit too bright. This one might be easier to see. X hat 2 subtract 4. Okay, so if you hit zoom 6 after you've typed it in, there's your equation, there's your graph. Now how do you find the vertex? Second trace, and it's a minimum since it's a low point, so you hit 3. And you move to the left of the low point, enter. Move to the right of the low point and hit enter, and then move back to the point itself and hit enter. And notice this is e negative 6. That just means that's really just 0. So 0, negative 4 is your vertex there. Right? So when you graph this, you got 0, negative 4 as your vertex, and it's pointing upward. Okay? And they ask you to identify the vertex. We found that 0, negative 4, and we've graphed it. And the way you can graph that pretty easily is just hit second table, and you got a whole bunch of points there. You can just plot some points and graph it as you want. Now if you're going to graph something on your software computer homework, you have to press the parabola tool. And when you do that, the very first point you have to graph has to be your vertex. Right? You have to graph the vertex as your first point when you're graphing a parabola. When you're graphing a quadratic, which is called a parabola, and you see the parabola tool on your toolbox in the upper right corner, you'll see it there. When you click on it, it'll say graph the vertex first. So you have to graph 0, negative 4 first, and then you can graph any other point you want other than that second. So after graphing 0, negative 4, you could graph 2, 0, or 1, negative 3, or negative 2, 6. It doesn't matter what other point you pick, but your first point has to be your vertex. All right. And then they say compare it to x squared. Well, what you've done there with x squared and x squared minus 4 is it just dropped it 4 units. That's all it did there. It shifted it down 4 units. Now what about 2x squared plus 1? Okay, well, clear the old one in there. Type 2x hat 2 plus 1. Zoom 6. And there's your graph. And you can find the vertex again by hitting second trace 3. Move to the left, enter, move to the right, enter, and move back to the point itself, enter. And you get something e negative 6. That's just 0, and you get 0, 1 there. So 0, 1 is your vertex, and you just plot one other point. And how do you find another point? Just hit second graph, and you got a whole bunch of points there. You can plot any other point you want. But you've got to graph 0, 1 first. Now what is this a graph of? Well, first off, since it's 2 for your A, it's going to be more narrow. It's going to shoot up faster. So it's more narrow, and the plus 1 bumps it up by 1 unit. So it's more narrow, and it's shifted up 1. Alright, and then this one, write the vertex form of the parabola that satisfies the given condition. The vertex is 3, 4, and A is 3. remember your vertex form is a x minus h squared plus k. Well, a is 3, your h is 3, your k is 4. So 3x minus 3 squared plus 4. All right. Now if they want you to write it out like this, expand it out, you have to multiply x minus 3 times itself, and that takes a bit of work. And then you got to multiply it by 3, and then you got to combine the 27 and the 4, and then you've finally written it in that form. It takes a bit of work. You got to multiply x minus 3 times x minus 3. That's x times x times 3. That's 3 times x, 3 times 3. And then you got to multiply all 4 of those by a 3. Then you got to combine like terms. It's a lot of work. All right. Number 4, same question as number 3. They give you your h, k, and a, and you plug all 3 of those in there. And then they ask you to expand it out, and you got to multiply all that out, and you got to multiply it by negative 1/2, and then you got to subtract 2. It's a lot of work. Number 5. Number 5, they don't tell you what a is. Well, they tell you a is either positive 1 or negative 1. All right. Now they tell you it opens downward, so now you know a is negative 1. Because they tell you a is positive 1 or negative 1, and depending on which way it opens, will tell you which one it is. If it opens downward, a is negative 1. If it opens upward, a is positive 1. Your vertex is your hk, so a is negative 1, h is negative 1, k is negative 2, and you multiply and you simplify all that down, and that's your answer. That's called vertex form. Okay, opens upward, so a is positive 1, and here's your vertex, so you plug in your h and your k, and there you go. Okay, and now this one, they give you the graph here, and from the graph you can see it's 0, negative 3, and it opens upward. So a is positive 1, and so it's 1 x minus 0 squared plus negative 3, and x minus 0 squared is just x squared, times 1 is just x squared, so x squared minus 3 is your equation. This one, a is 1 or negative 1, and since it's pointing downward, a is negative 1, and we know our vertex by looking at this is negative 1, 2, so a is negative 1, h is negative 2, k is 2, and you simplify subtracting a negative 1 as adding 1, and that's your answer. You don't have to multiply it out. It says find the value of the constant a so that ax squared models the data. It says, so if you're unsure, check it by making a table of values. And so for ax squared, we know the table of values is 1, 2, 2, 8, 3, 18. So you can plug a 1 in for x and a 2 in for y, and you can figure out what a needs to be. So if y has to be 2 and x has to be 1, you got 2 equals a times 1 squared, which is 2 equals a times 1, or 2 equals a. So a is 1, and that's what they wanted you to know there. So your formula is f of x equals 2x squared, but they don't want to know the formula, they just want to know what a is. Alright, and this one, this is the equation, and they ask you to find the vertex. Well, the vertex is always 8x minus this number, so x minus negative 2, and your k is 0 because there is no number here. So if you want to figure out what h is, you just change the sign of this guy. If this is positive, you write negative. If it's negative, you write positive. And the k is just whatever number you have there afterwards. So negative 2, 0. And it's actually, they ask you how is it shifted. It's actually shifted 2 units to the left. All right. Now this one, your a is 2, and your vertex is 5, negative 4. Again, you change the sign of this one, and you just use whatever number you have here. So you change this sign, but you don't change that sign. So it's 5, negative 4 is your vertex. And which way is this guy moved? It's actually moved to the right 5 and down 4. Right? And it's actually more narrow because of the 2. The 2 will make it go up faster. Okay, and this one's 1/2 x plus 3 squared minus 3, so negative 3 is your vertex. And so it's going to move to the left 3 and down 3, and the 1/2 is going to make it wider. So it's actually shifted left 3 and down 3, and it's wider. Okay, and this one's 5, 10, and it's going to be more narrow. Okay, and the minus 5 means it actually moves the opposite way. It moves to the right 5, and this number moves it up or down, up, positive, down, negative, so up 10. And this guy, you would think minus would mean move it to the left, but it actually moves the opposite way you would think. So that's to the right 5 and up 10, and it's more narrow. Okay. And number 14, they say use this first one as your vertex. So that's your H and your K. So X minus the 1980 and plus your K is 6. And so if that's your vertex form. And that's how you answer the questions on the homework assignment for 11.2.